Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Charles Ross. I'm a principal at Economist Impact, and I lead our technology and society practice. It's a great pleasure to spend the next 20 minutes or so with you today, talking about this great topic of how APAC businesses are driving transformation in the face of changing hybrid work models. Big topic, big challenge. To help me answer some of these questions, I've got a great set of panelists with me here today, and I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves. So, Chris, can I ask you to introduce yourself very quickly first for us?
Hi, my name's Chris Balogi. I'm the Head of ICT and Business Transformation at Southern Cross Care. We cover SA, NT and Victoria in Australia.
Fantastic, Chris. Really good to have you with us here today. And we have Attila, if you can introduce yourself.
My name is Attila Imam. I'm the head of culture at Capital A, and our portfolio of companies includes, of course, the well-known airline AirAsia.
Fantastic, Attila. Really good to have you with us as well. And last but not least, Daryl, if you could just take a moment to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. Daryl McKinnon. I lead the Google Workspace business for Asia Pacific, based in Singapore.
Fantastic. Welcome, Daryl. We've got really good, sort of diverse backgrounds on our discussion today, which is going to add some really useful insights for all of you who have taken the time to join us here today. A big thank you from me to you for doing that. We hope we can make the best of your time. Some of the research we've been doing recently with Google Workspace, which will be available for you to download once it's published in a couple of weeks, has found that while the pre-pandemic 92% of people worked fixed work hours, during the pandemic, that 92% dropped to an astonishing 6%. So massive impact on our work lives. This astonishing change has changed the way we think about work, and it's really driven the development of these hybrid work models. But we want to understand, what do these changes mean in reality for companies, and how has it really shaped the flexible work policies which 90% of firms we surveyed have been implementing? So my excellent guests will bring their perspectives from a range of industries to help us answer some of these questions. So getting straight into it, in terms of the trends, Attila, if I could go to you first. Your company's gone through a massive reorganization during the pandemic. I'm sure you'll mention a little bit about that when I go to you. But during this time when workplaces and ways of working have been disrupted, how has your ability to keep people motivated and focused been impacted here? Attila.
Well, thanks for the question, Charles. And jumping straight into it, I think you're right. It's about managing sentiment and behavior rather than a technological adoption change for us. We've been used to connecting through technology as we're spread out across the region. So for us, it wasn't about the technology adoption, but about the engagement of our people now that they've been dispersed. It was also a challenge to manage sentiment in terms of dealing with uncertainties as a result of it. So not only was it trying to connect people and adapt the way of working, but it was also giving more focus on how people were feeling and thinking, which of course we did before, but we tended to have to do it in terms of our operational people, in terms of the people on the front line dealing with the customers or dealing with, in the air. But we very quickly found that we'd had to extend that support, in fact, right across all roles and across all organizations within our umbrella of companies.
Chris, from your perspective, I feel like you're in a relatively unique position. You're in terms of the aged care sector. You've got frontline workers who've clearly been at the coalface, if you like, of some of the challenges that the pandemic has been throwing at us. And your workforce is split between them and some of the back office support. And these parts of the workforce have been impacted in different ways. Can you give us some insight into what that has looked like for you as a business?
Yes, it's obviously presented us with a number of challenges, being in what we call an essential service. The pandemic meant that things got busier. We needed to get staff still on site. Obviously, we run residential homes where staff have to attend the site, and also people in their homes that needed caring for. Technology has played a big part of that in that, we've been able to leverage some of the cloud tools without having to physically be on site. So at the beginning of the pandemic, doctors didn't want to transfer between one residential site to another. So it was great adoption of video tools to enable them to do those telehealth consultations was really fantastic for the teams there. Supporting teams, back office. So again, whilst they had to maintain their workloads, we were able to shift them into some sort of hybrid working environment where it didn't really matter where they were. However, that said, because of the nature of our business, we did find that our office had to operate. We had to continue being here, even if we did do shift work through the office to thin out the numbers. We still had to carry on working. And I suppose we're one of those frontline industries where, at the beginning, and we continue, as I said, to make sure that staff carry out their duties effectively and support the elderly, which is what we're here for. And I think technology has played a big part in that. And I think, like all of us, we've speeded up the deployment of some of the technologies to support that, and it's been a great reason to make change within our business.
Yeah, I hear that a lot when I talk to sort of business leaders such as yourself, that it has been the pandemic has been a spur for innovation and sped up the development and deployment of lots of new ways of working, adoption of technologies, et cetera, et cetera. So great to hear that. Darryl, lastly, I tend to assume, and I'm sure others sort of tend to assume, that the tech firms are very much at the forefront of industry trends and new ways of working. You, after all, sort of develop and create a lot of the technologies which enable a number of the things that Chris and Attila have been talking about. So the assumption is you've been doing this for a long time. Is that a fair assumption? Is that true, or has the pandemic actually had an impact on the way you are working yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Charles. Look, I think from a Google perspective, we've been using these technologies for many years. In fact, we tend to say, every day is a workspace day for us and how we use these technologies. But I think similar to other industries, people always like to connect. So all these technologies can help us do our jobs more effectively. But what we had to find is, how do we actually create and drive those culture and connections that we all thrive from when we were in the office. So we had a lot of lessons, a lot of pivots around, maybe transferring from a Thank God It's Friday event, which was maybe a physical event, to making sure that was a virtual event. And how did you make sure you included people in that to just keep those connections going? And as we move back to a hybrid world, it's not that we're all going to be back to work. We used to joke that was, how do you get people to work and then work to people? It's not that everyone's going to be back to the office again. So how do we make sort of events like that be hybrid? And so we're working through that. A lot of it's taking the technology and making it work well, and also getting people to think about new ways of working and how you don't have to do it one way. How can you take it and use that technology to solve problems? And I think that's when we as humans are at our best, right? When we actually have a problem to solve, and then how do we solve it?
So just switching to the challenges and some of the challenges we might face with these new ways of working. Attila, from our research, a strain on organizational culture was highlighted as one of the biggest challenges to come from these new ways of working. Given what you've been going through recently, I just wonder if you could talk about some of the strategies you deploy to keep people engaged and productive.
I'd like to highlight three, of which all really use technology to enable. The first one was simply a question of meeting productivity. And given that people were dispersed, not knowing whether they would be in the office or not, technology allowed us to ensure that there was transparency in information, right, about the meeting that would ensure the meeting was more effective. So insisting on calendar transparency, which of course the Google Calendar enables and allows, and accepting that there are multiple formats to a meeting, right? Some may be in person, some may be joining virtually, some may be just joining through a voice. So allowing those different formats to come through certainly helped, and ensuring that meetings were more productive by being clear about what the meeting was about. And I think sometimes we took meetings for granted, that we could just catch up with each other, and having that discipline to see whether this was a brainstorm or a decision-making process or just a huddle helped, I think, focus people on meeting productivity. The other two really dealt with engagement, and again, technology really helped here. The first was about allowing people to reach help, whereas before, well-being support, and especially emotional support, tended to be by word of mouth. We had chatbots, which allowed people to reach out and ask for help through different channels, including the phone, chat, email, or whatever. And what we did was we built on this by expanding the peer support program that we run in AirAsia internally to include different languages across all different countries, and ensuring that case management was more effective as well. So that was a question of making a support more accessible. And then the third thing I'd like to highlight is our approach to information and socialization. And for this, while we had a platform which enabled information to be pushed out or people to connect, we found that during the pandemic, culturally, we had to invest in, I suppose, what the TV people would call broadcast programming. Right, we'd have a team which actually created programs, scheduled them, sort out content, and we literally ran an in-house almost TV channel with different kinds of channels addressing different needs, social needs, information needs, formal needs, and so on and so forth, and then push these out so that people knew with certainty when to tune in, what information they needed, and feel that connection in a much more organized way, rather than sort of tuning in and not knowing when information would come out. So three things then in summary: meeting productivity because of transparency. Well-being support, access to well-being support through a technology, and being much more disciplined and organized about program content and scheduling to ensure that information reached people who were dispersed physically.
Chris, I wonder, do you think this change comes naturally for people? I think I grappled with it a little bit, but in the end I got there. Do you think it comes naturally for people?
I think humans are creatures of habit. If we can do the same thing every day in the same way, we'll do that, because that's our comfort zone for most people. And I think, as leaders in a business, that's the biggest challenge for me is, 80-90% of your employees will be happy if they could sit at their desk, or they could come to work and they could use the same tools in the same way they've done since the day one. So it's about bringing that change. That's one of the things I loved about the Google Workspace, was the fact that it forced people to change. It's all very well giving them the tools, but if they can carry on keeping their files locally or work in that same way that they used to work, they will do, because they're creatures of habit. So as soon as you put in tools that say, actually, it's harder to do it the way you used to do it, here's the new way, and look how good the new way is, and they suddenly get what we call the light bulb moment, and they go, oh, hey, actually, that is much better. And I think, I've really found that once people see that light bulb moment, they suddenly make that shift of, there is a new way of working, there is a better way of doing it. But I think as leaders, it is difficult. You're going to get a few people that really just resist to the nth degree. They really are stubborn. They don't like to change. They go to work exactly the same way at the same time every day and do the same thing. And frontline workers were probably easier for me, because they had to adapt. They had to take on video conferencing, because that was the only way they could connect. They couldn't physically go to meetings to meet each other. And so they were forced into that, which again made them change the way they approached their work. We also had a lot of requirements around data capture and reporting. So again, we had to use tools to do that and adopt those tools very quickly. So those are now ingrained into our new processes. And I think moving forward, we have made such a massive change in such a short period of time. And as I said before, this has been speeded up through the whole COVID pandemic and enabled us to come out at this point where we are so much more efficient in the way we work.
Yeah, it's a good point. You talk about efficiency, and so to some extent we covered this in our research to understand whether this remote working, these new ways of working, is going to help us to be more efficient. Can we really, and I'd love to ask you this question, Darryl, can we really innovate as well through a hybrid environment or a remote working environment? Can we innovate as well as we would do in person?
Thanks, Charles. My answer will be, I believe we can. And if we just listen to kind of what Attila shared and what Chris shared, they demonstrated how those organizations are innovating, in these times of challenges. I'm sure the Capital A team had some innovations in how they worked through the pandemic by having to move to this new way of working. And for Chris's organization, obviously they had to drive innovation in how they service, their residents and their patients through that environment. So I think through these tools, we are able to innovate. Is it the same way where we gather around the campfire in the old days and chip away to vet our tools? A little bit different, but that's the way, society and technology evolves. It's really about bringing together people with a good idea and then allowing them to brainstorm that idea and go over it and go over it again, and then really come out with how they do that. And if you think about all the great ideas, whether it was done in a garage, or whether it was done around the campfire, or whether it was done over video, I think we'll continue to see innovation with those different tools. We're just changing the way we innovate. And I know this for a fact that I've had 3 teenagers go through the last 2 years in pandemic, and they haven't got out to meet their friends, but they've been working on projects virtually. They've come up with great ideas about how they could do new ideas. So I see the next generation able to probably do that better than our previous generations because we're always evolving and adapting. So I would contend that we can. Doesn't necessarily mean that we don't miss being in the same room together or around the campfire, but it is possible to innovate without being together.
I just want to focus on the imperatives now. And we found from our research that one of the key imperatives for business leaders to maximize the value of these new ways of working is this need to treat all workers evenly and fairly. Now, almost 70% of the survey respondents that we spoke to said that this essential office staff and support staff should be treated the same and offered the same degree of flexibility and privileges as other workers. Thinking about that in your context, Chris, it sounds like an extraordinarily difficult thing to try and grapple with, given the very different natures of your team's roles. Is this a big imperative for you, and how are you grappling with it? Or if you have other imperatives, please shout out those as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I think, nowadays people can go out there and look for what is important in their work-life balance. Yes, look, our frontline workers, that doesn't even come into play. You have to be on site, as I said earlier. So, but our back office staff, and that's probably where the challenge comes in. And again, some teams need to be physically here. Some teams need to deal with issues day to day, the nature of our work. However, some teams don't. And I think for us, we really have to gauge our own teams and really understand, is there a need for them to physically be here? Can we be flexible? And I think we've all become certainly more flexible. We have adopted the fact that as soon as you feel slightly unwell or you have something you don't need to be in the office with, you've got something you need to do. It's that work-life balance. And I think it's made us all readdress and assess the way our work-life balance sits within us and our teams. Recruitment is challenging at the moment, especially in our industry. So you're looking at ways of staff retention and making it a place that people want to work. And if there's a balance that they want, it's about listening to that and working with that.
Yeah, really, really good points. And it's clear that staff and talent retention is something which all companies are grappling with. And they're all trying to find out this balance of flexibility with productivity and enabling innovation. And All very good points. Thank you. I'd like to hear from sort of Attila, just to understand the sort of imperatives. What is top of mind for you as you work your way through these new ways of working? Are you focusing on sort of additional technologies you might need to be investing in? Is it around digital skills that you might need to be building your team to take advantage of these tools? Are there other things that you're looking at?
Sure. Thanks, Charles. So essentially, we've gone through the pandemic, which has disrupted work life. But as a result of the pandemic, and as well as part of the trajectory that capital A companies and AirAsia in particular had gone through, we were undergoing a transformation to become more than just an airline. So here we had a transformation imperative, as well as an adjustment to the new ways of working as a result of the lockdowns and the pandemic. So what's key for us now is really to leverage the technology that we have, and the more integrated the better, to do essentially the following. Connection, just connecting itself is important, but the way we connect has got to be more immediate. Right? If we're going to be dispersed and not physically in person, you've almost got to feel that person is online. And email doesn't really cut that for us, and that's why we've invested a lot in chat and chat technology, including the automation of chat. And so this is where Google Chat comes in. We also need to ensure that we're aligned, especially with the transformation, that we're aligned with the direction that we're going in, and that we're collaborating towards that vision. And of course, you can't get better at collaborating than with the Google Workspace productivity tools, because we found people very quickly cottoned onto the fact that, well, wait a minute, I can work on this document at the same time you are, and it really feels as if you're sort of building, working on a building together, as opposed to passing it like a hot potato for revisions. And that's obviously really helped. And then, of course, moving forward, to get teams together in a space, so to speak, where they feel that they're together, even though they're not physically together, and can set each other tasks, is also very much helping with that collaboration. So the point really is to connect people in a more immediate way, to align people and get them collaborating again in real time and together virtually, right? Goes a long way in terms of providing a virtual way of working, even though we're not physically together, and aligning them towards the new direction of the company. So that's where the imperative is. It's reconnecting our people with each other, but also reconnecting them with this transformed organization and the transformation process that's sort of taking place in real time. And that's where the imperative lies. Of course, I can talk about the specific lines of business that we're in and where we're pushing in terms of regionalization and so on. But from a cultural perspective, I would say that's top of mind right now.
So we are unfortunately out of time. I'd like to pass a big thank you to each of my panelists. Thank you to Chris, thank you to Attila, and thank you to Daryl for being very generous with your time here today. And thank you to everybody out there as well for giving us some of your time to listen to this discussion. Hope you found it interesting. I hope you learned something during this discussion as well. I certainly have done. And I look forward to sort of having the opportunity to speak to you again in the future. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you very much.